Afrocentrist. Now, I view myself as a critical researcher. I don't call myself an Afrocentrist. Sorry. This is really simply a matter of rehearsal. It is a matter of emphasizing those texts and those books and doing good new scholarship that reinforce the perspective that, no, Egypt is indeed a part of the African world. Now, when you talk about a link, you have to be careful about links. I mean, direct links, less direct links, and what have you. For me, the African world is this wondrous, very diverse thing, just like the Asian world is. However, on parts of other people, they feel that they have evidence that controverts this because they have an idea that African means one thing. You know, and so that's a fundamental problem of knowledge. So like saying that Asian means one thing. Are the people from southern India, the Dravidians, are they Asians? Are people from Japan, northern Japan, who may be very fair-skinned, or Siberians, Asians? Are Iranians Asians? All of those people are Asians. They're all Asians. They all emerged in Asia. They all speak languages that emerged in Asia, and they all practice culture that emerged in Asia. So they're all Asians. Do they all look alike? No, they don't. Is their culture all the same? No, it isn't. That's what you have to understand. You have to be able to get your arms around that. How is someone qualified to identify the race of the Egyptians from statues? Well, that question has no real answer. Whether or not statues, once again, accurately depict the people that they represent is a very interesting question. Now, I have a slide, but unfortunately I don't have it with me. Well, I have it with me, but I don't have it there, of some individuals who were depicted with little statues. And then when they reconstructed their bodies, and this is from southern Egypt, the people looked totally different from the statues. The statues had them looking, let's say, stereotypically, say, what we might think of northern Egyptians. But when they actually reconstructed the people from their mummies, I mean, from their skeletons, and they did sort of forensic type analysis, the people looked just what you might expect from Upper Egypt. I mean, they had different kind of set of facial features that some people would say are, quote, more African. Although, as I want to point out, that the Somali with a nose narrower than the Swedes and a certain kind of facial profile is just as African as Kwame Nkrumah or, you know, Sidney Poitier, you know, what have you. Mangbetu people have swollen heads through binding and look similar to the heads of Amana statues. Is there a connection between the two? This is a question about head binding and cranial deformation. And if you look in different societies all over the world, you'll see different variations of this. When the question is asked, is there a connection between the two? We have to ask ourselves, connection in what way? Is there a common set of cultural values or aesthetics that value this? How widespread would one want to see a custom or a trait before one wanted to say there was some common cultural basis? And so ideas do travel. Sometimes they travel complete and intact, and sometimes they don't. I can't comment whether this sort of singular custom amongst this particular group of people has anything to do with Amana specifically. If it had been the case that throughout all of Egyptian history, people had been, you know, binding their heads and creating this, I might be more prone to say that, yeah, well, maybe there's some deep-rooted idea that survived in different places. Maybe it goes back to the Sahara. I don't have that kind of evidence. So my tendency would be to say that no, the specific practices at Armana, specifically at Armana, are probably not connected. And the crania from Dar es Sultan V dates around 60,000 years ago. It has clustered with a group of Upper Paleolithic European skulls, as well as overlapping with North Africa. Only problem with 60,000 years ago and these Upper Paleolithic skulls, I mean, what's the problem with that? Let me ask you. They have material from Upper Paleolithic Europe, and they have this Dar es Sultan cranium or partial cranium, which is probably about 60,000 years old, and it's clustering with the Upper Paleolithic Europeans. So does that mean that it came from Europe? That would be our reflex, right? Does it mean? You can talk.
No.
Why not?
Because, you know, if it came out of Africa.
Huh?
If it came out of Africa.
Well, no, but I want you to answer this a very specific way. We have Upper Paleolithic European material, and we have this specimen that's 60,000 years old, and from North Africa, and it's clustering, it's grouping with Upper Paleolithic Europeans. So did it come from Upper Paleolithic means modern people, but the rest of these specimens I can tell you in this study came from Europe. So does it mean that Dar es Sultan came from Europe? It's clustering with them. Come on, we got Cambridge students here. Right? PhD, master students, somebody? Oh no, people are shaking their, oh. Good. There were no modern people in Europe 60,000 years ago. There were no modern people in Europe 60,000 years ago. There were no modern people in Europe 60,000 years ago. So the fact that it clusters with them cannot be used naively to say that it came from Europe, because there was nobody in Europe for it to come from.
Okay.
You mentioned about there being no Europeans 60,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me when they first went into Egypt? When the Mediterranean people first went into Egypt?
When I talk about 60,000 years ago, there being no modern people in Europe, what I'm saying is the best evidence that we have for modern people being anatomically, what we call anatomically modern people in any part of Europe is at the outside 40,000 years, okay? And when you talk about Mediterranean people, we need to talk about that later on, because as I have said and tried to say, Africans don't all look alike. So some of what you're calling Mediterranean people are just some more Africans, okay? Now, you have to get your arms around that. And that's what that last slide was about with the PN2 transition. Because most of the people there who have that PN2 transition, that particular gene, that genealogy, in its derived form is M35, for example, Berbers are M35, M81, those people don't look like Congolese. 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 But I'm trying to have you understand that they are carrying genealogically, in terms of their male ancestry at least, they're carrying something that ties them to the rest of the continent and does not tie them to Europe, even though physically, externally, you may say, well, gee, they look like Europeans. You understand what I'm saying? So when you ask me, when did X, we don't use those concepts of Mediterranean race, Alpine race, Nordic race, all that, that's from another era. You know, it's descriptive, and in actual fact, you will find, you can find individuals all over the world who might conform to one of those sort of categories. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So then,
that's the same thing they say about being Arab. Arab is a culture, not a race. It means traveling person.
okay, but I'm trying to understand, what are you asking me here?
Well,
you ask me very specifically. You ask me, when did Mediterranean people get to Egypt? I don't know what you mean by Mediterranean. But let me
people
repeat
that
myself.
Don't look African.
No, well, there's more than one way to be African. There's more than one way to look African. There's more than one way to look Asian. There's more than one way to be Asian. That is what you have to, from my perspective as an evolutionary biologist, that's what you have to get your arms around. The people in southern India are just as Asian as the people in northern China, who are just as Asian as the people from the Eurasian steppes. You know, they don't look alike. And you measure them, they don't look alike. I don't use that. No, I don't use that term Negro.
Yeah, I don't mean Sat. I'm just trying to make a strong point. Were they black?
Well, in terms of their skin color, they would have been dark based on ecological principles. Based on principles, that's our guess. Do we have any?
Be dark and Asian, or you could be dark and black. So what I'm saying. Sorry to use the word Negro, but at the time, would they have been Negroes coming out of Africa?
I don't know what you mean by Negro, and I wouldn't use that word. I wouldn't use that word. No, I will say that they were dark, and I don't know how dark, and they had limb ratios that are tropical, that you find in the tropics today. Okay, those are all things that, based on biological principles, would tie them to where they are. And most people, and most scientists would say yes, they would have been dark. How dark, I can't tell you. They wouldn't have been blonde, no, if that's what you're asking. If that's the hidden question underneath, no, they wouldn't have been blonde.
In other words, they would have been African, from Africa, they would have been...
At that moment in time, you're talking about a species history.
Sorry.
Okay?
Okay,
It's
we
a
need
different
to just
issue.
wind down.
Now, I view myself as a critical researcher. I don't call myself an Afrocentrist. Sorry. This is really simply a matter of rehearsal.